IDF says 2 UN peacekeepers hurt when soldiers fired at immediate threat. Immediate threat. I wonder what was that immediate threat. France, Italy, Spain issue joint statement condemning IDF for harming UNIFIL. Biden says he has asked in Israel not to target UN. 2 Lebanese army soldiers killed. Here we go. They're killing the army now. Well, at least France, Italy, and Spain are condemning. It's a good way forward. But the Biden is saying he asked Israel not to target the UN. Okay. I think that's enough. I mean, that deters Israel. Just tell them, don't target the UN. 2 UN peacekeepers were injured on Friday by an Israeli strike near their watchtower in South Lebanon, the Israeli military said, while blasts shook the peacekeepers' main base in the area for the second time in 48 hours as Israeli forces battled Hezbollah. The Israel Defense Forces said its troops on Friday fired at an immediate threat emanating from near a UN peacekeeping mission position. How convenient is that? The Israeli military expressed deep concern and said 2 peacekeepers had been injured by Israeli fire as it was engaging Hezbollah. Said they had been warned hours earlier to take shelter. The United Nations said both were from Sri Lanka. The Israeli military said soldiers operating in southern Lebanon identified an immediate threat against them. The soldiers responded with fire toward the threat. Initial examination indicates that during the incident, a hit was identified on a UNIFIL post located approximately 50 meters from the source of the threat, resulting in the injury of 2 UNIFIL personnel. UNIFIL said that also on Friday, several blast walls at our UN position 131 near the blue line in Labuni fell when an IDF Caterpillar hit the perimeter and IDF tanks moved in the proximity of the UN position. These incidents put again UN peacekeepers who are serving in South Lebanon at the request of the Security Council under Resolution 1701 at very serious risks. Earlier, Lebanon's foreign ministry said the Israeli army targeted watchtowers and the main UNIFIL base, Naqoura, and on the Sri Lankan battalion's base, which led to a number of wounded. Lebanon's official national news agency said an Israeli Merkava tank targeted one of the UNIFIL towers on the main road linking Tyre and Naqoura, wounding the Sri Lankan personnel. Hezbollah said on Friday it fired rockets at Israeli troops in the Ras Naqoura area a little further south. The UNIFIL force said that the incident was a serious development and that the security of UN personnel and property must be guaranteed. France summoned Israel's ambassador and issued a joint statement with Italy and Spain, saying such attacks were unjustifiable. US President Joe Biden said he was asking Israel not to hit the UNIFIL forces. Yeah, I think that's the best thing. Just tell them not to hit them, isn't it? Russia said it was outraged and demanded Israel to refrain from hostile actions against the peacekeepers. And UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres said had already condemned the attacks on UN personnel. Okay. Well, that's not changing anything. They're still targeting them. They are clearly indicating that they will target them more, right? Here they're telling you they have 10,000 personnel with Italy, France, Malaysia, Indonesia, and India among the biggest contributors. And the Chief of Staff of Ireland Defence Forces, which has around 340 personnel, said he believed Friday's attack on the observation tower was deliberate. Well, of course it's deliberate. Finally, someone talking as indirectly, not covering up. An observer tower with a round from a tank directly into it, which is a very small target, has to be very deliberate, and it's a direct fire. So from a military perspective, this is not an accidental act, it's a direct act. Lieutenant General Sean Clancy told RTE television. Thank you. 2 Indonesian UN peacekeepers were injured. Again, UN is telling you it's deliberate. The Irish Lieutenant General Sean Clancy, he's telling you it's deliberate. You can't make a mistake from a military perspective. But again, the Zionist bootlickers and slaves, they always want to act like they don't understand anything when it comes to military and small details, and they only talk propaganda and venom. But at least we have some people clarifying from the UN. What does that tell you? Well, they clearly target international bodies, peacekeeping forces. Can someone tell me what if Iran did that? What if Iran targeted UN peacekeeping forces? What would happen? They would declare war on them. They would declare war tomorrow. The US and NATO war on Iran immediately. They targeted UN peacekeeping forces. Not when it's Israel. Not when it's their little bee child. No. We asked them not to target them. Why didn't you say that to Iran then? Why don't you have a consistent tone? We asked Israel, don't target them. Like you asked them not to kill civilians in Gaza. That worked pretty well, didn't it? Anyway, they're escalating with the UN, and just wait for the massacres when it comes to UN forces. Just wait for that to happen. They did that before, they're going to do it again. They're on the way to do it. What Israel does usually, they have these small strikes as a preparation to a bigger strike, and those strikes will come. And they will come and they will get away with it. That's what's going to happen. Like they got away with it in 2006 and in previous years. Why? Because they're the chosen people. They can do that. If you're non-chosen, you can't do that. But because they're the chosen ones, they can get away with it. That was the second thing that I wanted to talk to you about. And then we want to talk about the meeting between Putin and Pezeshkian, the rising superpowers. We have a meeting now between Putin and Pezeshkian. Russia's Putin holds first meeting with Iran's Pezeshkian. What we know, this was published on The Monitor. Russian President Vladimir Putin met with Iranian President Masoud Pezeshkian in Ashgabat, Turkmenistan, Friday, in their first face-to-face meeting since Pezeshkian's election in late July. During the meeting on the sidelines of an international forum of Central Asian leaders, Putin hailed Russia's relations with Iran as sincere and strategic. Relations with Iran are a priority for us, Putin told Pezeshkian, as reported by RIA Novosti, the Russian state-owned news agency. He also described Iran and Russia's positions on international developments as very close. Moscow and Tehran actively cooperate with each other in the international arena and often agree on their assessments of world events, he said. Pezeshkian made similar remarks, saying our positions in the world are much closer to each other than other countries, according to the Iranian state-run Press TV. Speaking on regional developments, Pezeshkian condemned Israeli military actions in Gaza and Lebanon, warning the situation in the region is critical. Putin extended an invitation for Pezeshkian to attend the upcoming BRICS summit in the Russian city of Kazan on October 23rd, 24th, congratulating Iran on becoming full member of the bloc last year. The Turkmenistan meeting coincides with seemingly growing tensions in the Middle East amid a potential Israeli reprisal for Iran's ballistic missile attack against Israel earlier this month. On October 1st, Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, IRGC, launched some 180 ballistic missiles at Israel, the second such attack this year, and what Tehran said was a response to Israel's assassination of Hezbollah's Secretary General. said Hassan Nasrallah and the IRGC's Quds Force Deputy Commander, Abbas Nilforushan. They also said that it was a response to Haniya and the killings in Gaza. In a strike in Beirut's southern suburbs on September 27th, as well as the killing of Hamas political leader, they added that, good, Ismail Haniya in Tehran in July. Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is about to respond to the attack, saying, Iran made a big mistake tonight and will pay for it. Netanyahu said in a statement shortly after the attack. Meanwhile, Russia, which has forged strong military relations with Iran in the past few years, warned Friday against an Israeli strike on Iranian civilian nuclear facilities, saying it would amount to a serious provocation. Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov said at a press conference in Laos today that International Atomic Energy Agency has found no indications of Iran having begun to transform its nuclear program into a military one. If any plans or threats to attack the Islamic Republic of Iran's peaceful nuclear facilities are realized, it would indeed be a very serious provocation, he stressed. Moscow and Tehran have strengthened their military and economic ties in the face of sanctions imposed on them by the West and by their growing political isolation since Russia's invasion of Ukraine in February 2022 in a $1.7 billion deal signed in late 2022. Iran agreed to supply Russia with hundreds of drones for its offensive against Ukraine. Washington recently confirmed Russia taking delivery of advanced weaponry from Iran. Speaking at a press conference in London on September the 10th, Secretary of State Antony Blinken accused Tehran of sending short-range ballistic missiles to Moscow to be used in its war in Ukraine. His remarks coincided with fresh U.S. sanctions imposed on ships and companies allegedly involved in the transfer of weapons from Iran to Russia. You see, this is the U.S. logic. They can transfer weapons to their proxies and their puppets. It doesn't matter what they do and what kind of crimes they make or genocide or whatever, but Iran is not allowed to do that with Russia. Do you understand? This is the logic of the US. Meanwhile, Iran finalized the deal last November to procure Sukhoi Su-35 fighters, Mil Mi-28 attack helicopters, and Yak-130 jet trainers. Iranian Deputy Defense Minister Mahdi Farahi announced at the time. The Yak-130s have been delivered according to the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace, but it remains unclear whether any of the other aircraft have as well. Iranian officials had denied reports in April claiming imminent delivery of new Russian Sukhoi Su-35 fighter jets. Reports also emerged in August about alleged Russian arms shipments being delivered to Iran. The New York Times cited Iranian officials at the time as saying that Russia had begun to transfer advanced radar and air defense equipment to Tehran following a request made to the Kremlin. The governments in Tehran and Moscow did not issue comments on the report at the time. Relations between Iran and Russia have also deepened at the political level. Iranian and Russian officials have exchanged several visits in recent years. Most prominently, Russian Foreign Minister Lavrov traveled to Tehran on October 23, 23, 2 weeks after Hamas launched its attack on Israel. According to a Foreign Ministry press release, Lavrov met with then President Ibrahim Raisi and then Foreign Minister Hossein Amir Abdullahian and stressed the need for a ceasefire in Gaza. They also rejected the West's illegitimate unilateral sanctions, which the Foreign Ministry said undermined the global economy. More recently, on September 30th, Russian Prime Minister Mikhail Mishustin arrived in the Iranian capital for an official visit, during which he held talks with Pezeshkian on ways to boost bilateral cooperation. Also, two high-ranking Russian officials who are also aides to President Putin were in Tehran on September 17th to discuss bilateral cooperation, the international north-south transport corridor, a key cross-regional infrastructure project aimed at facilitating trade connectivity between India, Iran, Azerbaijan, Russia, Central Asia, and Europe was at the center of the discussions. Putin, in his first trip abroad after the Russian invasion of Ukraine, visited Iran in July 2022. That clearly shows you how much these countries are getting closer and closer together. Not only that, we also had top security figures visiting Iran. Sergei Shoigu visited Iran. The Air Force commander of Belarus, who's also tied with Russia, they visited Iran as well. All of these things indicate that these countries are getting closer and closer together. And every time, and I monitored all of these meetings, these figures, the Iranian officials and their Russian counterparts, or in the case of the Belarusian officials, they would talk about the rise of a multipolar world. It's always there, this conversation. We're looking to build a multipolar world, the end of the unipolar world, the end of US hegemony. These people are serious about what's happening, and they are taking concrete steps towards that direction, a very necessary direction to stop this grand mass scale thuggery and bullying of the United States administration committing atrocities and mass scale terror across the world through its proxies and trying to, up until the last second, prevent the establishment of a fairer multipolar world with its power being in check. What we're seeing now with this insane recklessness coming from Israel and the genocide and expanding their operations with this US enablement and support is primarily the US trying to put its foot down in the Middle East and dictate what's happening, to have an example for other regions too. Look what we got here. Don't mess with us. We are the empire. Don't mess with us. Look what we're capable to do. Look what we're capable of doing. That's what Israel is doing on their behalf. However, it's not working. The opposing side, if you talk about Russia, if you talk about Iran, they don't have the same hostile approach that their Western counterparts have against them and the region as a whole. They are indeed looking to grow the BRICS, have this economic cooperation, develop their countries and other countries too, through joint collaborations, joint projects, economic projects, stronger military ties, some defense pacts here and there, or strategic pacts here and there too, to have a challenging force to create and finally establish this multipolar world that has been required for a very long time. But of course, the United States of America is trying to delay it as much as possible. And they still are with what Israel is doing as well, their proxy. Now, final thing that I want to talk to you about before I open the space up for you. Israel is supposed to be in a war with Gaza. They declared Gaza, they declared the war after they began, official state of war, which hasn't been the case for decades. But now things are changing. What's changing? Well, Gaza is now a secondary arena, according to Israeli media. Gaza is a secondary arena. And I'm going to read through that for a bit and tell you what that means. So we have this published in Ynet. Raid under new conditions. Gaza has become a secondary arena. The operation in Jabalia could last months. 2 brigade combat teams have been crowning Jabalia for almost a week in front of tens of thousands of Gazans, most of whom refused to evacuate south under pressure from Hamas. Lies, of course, garbage, which is operating a hard hand. Again, garbage. The T's, we all know who the terrorists are. Prepare the shell with trapped houses, loading bays and anti-attack ambushes. We have eliminated more than 100 so far. 4 fighters killed in action. Okay, so get rid of the propaganda part, of course, and the lies and the garbage. The main thing that we want to understand here is that the fact that they are considered as a secondary front, secondary combat zone. What does that mean? That means Israel is slowly ending the state of war when it comes to Gaza and preparing for a declaration that this is more of a combat zone. Now that they're saying it's secondary place, that means it's not our priority. Our priority now is Lebanon. And if our priority in Lebanon, that means we will deploy most of our forces in Lebanon and we will continue to focus on Lebanon. But that doesn't mean that Lebanon is the only big thing now. They want Iran. They want Iran, but they are very frustrated. They're very frustrated when it comes to the response. They haven't come up with this formula of how are we going to attack Iran in a manner where we won't attract a response on us, something that is acceptable by the US administration, but something that we can take responsibility of, show our bloodthirsty supporters that look what we've done. And at the same time, not drag the region into an all-out war for the sake of America, not for the sake of like anyone else. Netanyahu wants an all-out war, but not necessarily the United States. And again, although we have a lot of theater going on between Israel and the United States, in April that worked. This formula worked when Biden told them, "You got the win, take it." When they intercepted the missiles, they did take it, and we only had this firework thing in western Iran. It wasn't anything significant, and Israel did not take responsibility. So Iran could say, okay, well, it's not Israel technically, and really it's nothing significant. However, now would Israel be happy with something like that? Doesn't appear to be that way. And they are quite likely to do something that might escalate. Will they find this magical formula that would work? And Iran would say, well, we don't know. It's not you, maybe, or something. And de-escalate. We will see about that.